this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my HVAC guy I found on Angie.com to change my grandpa's trachea tube? Because I was so amazed by how quickly he replaced our air ducts. I knew I could trust him to change Pop-Pop's tube while I was on vacation.
Make it quick, young man.
Aw, see? Pop-Pop trusts you.
I think we should call a doctor.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Welcome to another episode of One Thing Trump Did, available exclusively on the Middle podcast feed. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and every week on this show, we pick just one thing coming out of the Trump White House and break it down in a nonpartisan way with someone who knows what they're talking about. And our one thing this week is autism, also known as autism spectrum disorder. It's a condition often characterized by difficulties in social communication and interaction. And according to the latest data from the CDC, the condition is estimated to affect 1 in 31 children around the United States. Autism has also been a particular focus of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has proffered a number of unproven theories surrounding the cause of autism, including that certain vaccines can cause it or that it is brought on by environmental toxins. But now Kennedy and Trump say it's the use of Tylenol during pregnancy.
The HHS will act on acetaminophen. The FDA is responding to clinical and laboratory studies that suggest a potential association between acetaminophen use during pregnancy and adverse neurodevelopmental outcomes, including later diagnosis for ADHD and autism. Scientists have proposed biological mechanisms linking prenatal acetaminophen exposure to altered brain development. We have also evaluated the contrary studies that show no association. Today, the FDA will issue a physician's notice about the risk of acetaminophen during pregnancy and begin the process to initiate a safety label change.
Well, joining me now is Dr. Zachary Rubin, a pediatric allergist and immunologist. Dr. Rubin, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, before we start digging into this, what was your initial reaction when you heard Kennedy and Trump make this link between Tylenol during pregnancy and autism?
So I was actually visiting my parents when we were watching the press conference. My dad's a general pediatrician in the area. I started out in general pediatrics and keep my certification, and our jaws just both dropped when he was talking at that press conference, because he was telling the general public for pregnant women to not take acetaminophen, known as Tylenol, based off of really no new data on this issue. And it's become this hot button topic because of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s messaging lately about how he has this agenda that he's been wanting to figure out what is the underlying cause of autism spectrum disorder, when scientists have been working at this for decades, and people are working on this as their entire career. And so to hear the president say these statements, even when he even said that he doesn't care about talking about it carefully, unlike what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is doing, it sends a very clear message to folks that in his position of authority, this is what he thinks is the right thing to do, even though there is not strong evidence to link acetaminophen use during pregnancy and children developing autism spectrum disorder and other neurodevelopmental disorders later in life.
Well, what do we know at this point about the potential causes of autism?
So there's a few issues here. One is the fact that our criteria to diagnose autism spectrum disorder has extremely expanded over the past several years. So in the latest DSM-5 criteria, they lumped several different diagnoses together to describe autism as more of a spectrum, as the name implies. So you're going to find a lot more people will fall under the category of autism spectrum disorder, so it's going to increase the diagnoses. We're just looking for it better. We have a better understanding of it. If you look at 40, 50 years ago, people might have been called an idiot savant, as an example. There was also the term Asperger's syndrome. And so many different ways that people have different neurodevelopmental conditions would end up being lumped into one category. But because it's a spectrum, there's a wide range of differences that we often talk to and refer to as neurodiversity. And it doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of people need a lot of extra help. Some do, absolutely, and we need to support those who do. But it ends up stigmatizing folks who carry this diagnosis. And here, the president and the Health and Human Services Secretary say that this is an epidemic and this is tragic, when in reality, that's not what's happening.
So you think there are not more children today with autism than there were 10, 20, 30 years ago? We're just better at diagnosing it.
It's not to the same level that the current administration is saying. Part of it, again, is increased surveillance, and there may be some environmental factors, but it's often passed down through genetics. We've already isolated hundreds of genes that are associated with people developing autism spectrum disorder. But like a lot of chronic conditions that I take care of and other physicians take care of, it's not one root issue. There's multiple issues, whether it's genetics and environment, playing a role for something to turn out later in life or at the beginning of life.
Well, and when it comes to the connection between Tylenol during pregnancy and autism, I was reading an article about a mother who has 3 children with autism who said, I never took Tylenol during pregnancy. And she was actually insulted by this announcement. Do you think people who have autism or children with autism took what Kennedy and Trump said seriously?
From my patients in the community that I serve, most of them were very offended by it because it essentially places blames on moms, right? That, well, if you took this medication, this is why your child ended up this particular way, and it's extremely tragic. And that's not the reality of the situation. We need to make sure that we support those who live with autism spectrum disorder, have acceptance. If there's any kind of support that's needed, that's what we really need to figure out at this time, and not frame this as something that is extremely tragic that we're not going to be able to survive as a society because people have neurodiversity, essentially.
So you're not seeing patients say, I'm worried about taking Tylenol during pregnancy now?
Not really in my practice, but I know of my colleagues in OBGYN who are talking to pregnant moms every single day, have been fielding a lot of questions and concerns about this. And I've taken to social media to discuss these issues and go over the studies that they're talking about to help clarify some of these misconceptions that are happening, because they keep saying that there's a Harvard study that came out. It actually wasn't from Harvard. It was from Mount Sinai. They just happened to have the dean of Harvard's public health school now there. So they're mislabeling it. And the study that they're talking about is a review of 46 other studies. And when you take a bunch of studies and put them together to make a conclusion, if you have a weak study or two in there, it's going to make the data not as credible. And a lot of these studies used maternal recall. So they asked moms whether or not they were taking acetaminophen during pregnancy and how much. And, you know, for you and me, it's like, do you remember what your meal was 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago? It's going to be hard. That's something we call recall bias. And so those studies were also fraught with confounding factors where they didn't really adjust for genetics or necessarily why they were taking acetaminophen to begin with. We know that fever can increase the risk of children developing neurodevelopmental disorders, which makes sense because of the increased inflammation that is going on. And there's a lot of confusing points that people are hearing that are not true, and it takes time to unravel it. But when you get a soundbite from the president saying, tough it out, don't take acetaminophen or Tylenol during pregnancy, that's going to carry weight.
Well, but if you look at all of those studies that you talk about, and you think about the fact that autism spectrum disorder, we know, comes from a mix of things, could be, some of it is genetic, some of it may be environmental factors. Is it possible, just in part of that data, that there is some link? It's not like it's, if you take Tylenol during pregnancy, then you're going to have a child with autism, but that maybe it's one of the contributing factors.
When you look at the data, there are studies that are saying that, absolutely. And so let's say, for discussion's sake, it was a part of it. It's going to be modest at best. But what helps kind of put this to rest is there was a study out of Sweden where they controlled for as many confounding factors as possible by looking at siblings. And they found that in over 2 million kids, that relationship went away between acetaminophen use in pregnancy and autism. And it's a very well done, high-powered study to show that there's really no association there. And then let's look at the flip side here. If a mom has a fever during pregnancy, what medications can they take safely, right? There was a politician, I'm forgetting who it was, one on Bill Maher recently, saying we should look into ibuprofen to be used during pregnancy. And the problem is that ibuprofen is already known to cause severe birth defects or increase the risk of miscarriage depending on when you're taking it. There's really no other safe alternative to acetaminophen, and telling moms to tough it out is not good advice.
Why do you think that Kennedy and Trump made this link?
Well, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said several months ago over the summer that they were going to find the cause of autism by September. And they didn't. They had to put something out there, and they knew they couldn't say vaccines because that's been studied over and over and over again. So they found something that they could cherry pick the data to be able to make this kind of link. And if you look at the FDA's language in the letter they sent to physicians, they even say there's no causal link. They flat out admit that. So what they're telling healthcare workers is very different than what they're telling the general public. It's this mixed messaging that's very concerning and confusing.
Even Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, who's in the administration, in his quote in the press release from Health and Human Services, it's like he's not exactly saying what they're saying. He's just saying, it's good that we're looking into this as one of the many options that might be causing autism, which is, I just thought was kind of interesting. Stay with us, because in a moment we're going to talk about the treatment option that Kennedy announced for people with autism. One Thing Trump Did with Dr. Zachary Rubin. We'll be right back.
Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my HVAC guy I found on Angie.com to change my grandpa's trachea tube? Because I was so amazed by how quickly he replaced our air ducts. I knew I could trust him to change Pop-Pop's tube while I was on vacation.
Make it quick, young man.
Aw, see? Pop-Pop trusts you.
I think we should call a doctor.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
How do you make chicken nuggets like 7,000% better? Short answer, you let Taco Bell make them. Long answer, start with all white meat chicken nuggets, bread them in crunchy tortilla chips, and serve them with Hidden Valley Diablo Ranch. Yep, that's Hidden Valley Ranch mixed with Taco Bell Diablo sauce. It's exactly what it sounds like, and somehow even better. Simple math, spicy results. Crispy chicken nuggets from Taco Bell. a brand new classic, at participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only, while supplies last.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
Welcome back to One Thing Trump Did exclusively on the Middle podcast feed. I'm Jeremy Hobson. This episode, we're talking about the Trump administration linking acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol, and autism. And I'm joined by Dr. Zachary Rubin, a pediatric allergist and immunologist. Dr. Rubin, I had not heard of this medication before, but it's called leucovorin. It is a medication used to help with the effects of a cancer medication. Kennedy now says it can be used to treat autism. What is it?
Great question. So leucovorin is a type of folate.
See, I even
supplement.
said it wrong. Leucovorin. Okay, there you go.
Well, at least you didn't say acetaminophen. You know,
Right, that's right.
I know it's a little low, but the point is that leucovorin as a folate type supplement has been tested in a small subset of children with autism spectrum disorder, but those who have significant language delay. And there is a theory that some folks with autism spectrum disorder may have an autoimmune response that makes it difficult for folate to get into the brain, and that this supplement could potentially help with that. So for a small subset of children with autism spectrum disorder that have severe language difficulty, there is a small amount of evidence that it may work. But the way that they're talking about it is overgeneralizing this supplement that is normally used, like you were mentioning before, for chemotherapy. So if you take a medicine called methotrexate, that can deplete folate, and you need to be able to replenish that during chemotherapy. And so there's a theoretical concern that if they're going to tout this supplement, are we going to be able to have enough for those who actually need it? And is it going to have the benefits that is going to be there? There's potential risks, just like any type of therapy. And normally the FDA would look at this and highly scrutinize it, but it's unusual to me that they move so quickly on this. From my own research, it turns out that Dr. Oz used to have some clear conflicts of interest with a company called iHerb, and had several millions of dollars related to that company. Now, he's supposed to divest it now that he's in the position that he's in, but it makes you wonder, what is the end game here with this type of recommendation?
What are the treatments for autism right now?
A lot of the treatments have to do with supportive therapies to be able to make sure that they're able to really go through day-to-day life with some of the sensory issues that they may have, some processing disorders that they may have, to be able to learn and grow just like any child that goes to school. So they may have special accommodations. Depending on some of the behaviors, there may be certain medications used depending on what's going on, and it's highly individualized.
So I wonder how the perception of autism, you mentioned the word stigma earlier, but how it has changed over the decades. There are now these 2E schools, twice exceptional, meaning someone who both has autism but also exceptional intellectual skills. And by the way, I remember years ago doing an interview with a father whose son had autism, and I used the word autistic, and somebody rightly called me out and said, that's not how you refer to somebody with autism, because it's not the thing that defines the person. It's just something that is part of who they are. How has the perception around autism changed in your time?
Well, I think we were moving in the right direction in terms of trying to understand it better, to have more acceptance. Yes, the language is really important because we want to treat people as people and not label them, right? Because it can be quite offending. But lately, in the past 8 months, I feel like we've taken 10 steps backwards in how we talk about this, which has been rather concerning to me, because the more stigma that we have on people, the less likely they're going to want to seek help in the ways that would be helpful. And also the ability to get funding to help people has been constrained in many ways.
What do you mean?
So not necessarily just I'm talking about autism spectrum disorder in general, but when we talk about our state of public health right now, with the fact that we've had all sorts of experts leaving or being fired and being demonized for what they're doing, it's caused a lot of mistrust that's been misplaced on scientists and healthcare professionals. So the ability for people to necessarily seek out the right care may end up getting limited over time.
That, by the way, is the topic of our middle show coming up later this week with Neil deGrasse Tyson. We're going to be talking about the role of science in public life, which gets to this, but also all the science funding that's been cut by the Trump administration so far. By the way, the maker of Tylenol is a company called Kenvue. It saw its stock price drop after the announcement from Trump and Kennedy. It's now at a 2-year low. So it does seem like many people obviously trusted this warning.
Well, let's remember what happened in the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic when President Trump was saying we should look into bleach as a treatment. And then right afterwards, there was a rise in the number of poison control calls related to disinfectant exposure. So his words have a lot of meaning that people take seriously, which is why I'm glad that you're having me on to talk about this, because people need to understand that they should be talking with their doctor and trusting their doctors over a politician.
Dr. Rubin, just before we let you go, as somebody who has studied this, is focused on it, has patients who deal with this, what's your sort of thought about how soon there will be better treatment for autism in this country?
Well, our rigor in terms of looking into all of these different issues, not just autism spectrum disorder, but infectious disease and other chronic diseases, our ability to advance science is at an all-time high. I mean, look at the beginning of the pandemic when we had to develop a vaccine, which was based off of decades of scientific rigor, but we were able to get all the resources together to get a very large-scale clinical trial to show a safe and effective vaccine. And we did that through human ingenuity. And I am hopeful that we'll have better understanding and better treatment as we continue to advance science and medicine. So I am hopeful.
That is Dr. Zachary Rubin, who is a pediatric allergist and immunologist. Dr. Rubin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to you for listening to One Thing Trump Did. It was produced by Harrison Patino. As I said, Neil deGrasse Tyson on the middle later this week, the role of science in public life. And if you like this podcast, please rate it 5 stars wherever you get your podcast. Write a review. Our theme music was composed by Noah Haidu. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and I will talk to you soon.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.